Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to the 19th episode of HeleCloud Talks Cloud with myself and Walter and two guests. We have both invited a person we have with before. I've invited Vasil, and Walter has invited Jonah. So, Vasco, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, I'm
No,
new.
but you will.
Yeah, thanks for being so pushy. Um, I'm still like 40 and something year old, working with computers and have passion in computers since I was, I don't know, 7 or something. It was popular stuff to push your 7-year-old kid to learn computers in Bulgaria. So I got all these things and yeah, working with different stuff like worked in a hardware assembly shop, worked with servers, Linux, Windows, everything, infrastructures, and yeah, that's it. Boring stuff, computers.
Thank you. Jonah?
Also worked with Lina for quite some time, probably a year.
Yeah, that was a very long period of my life that
Not so
still
boring,
giving me
I would imagine.
PTSD. So, Yana, you want to say about your history with
Yeah.
Walter? What is he like in real life? Tell us the dirty stuff.
He's even nicer in real life than he is on video. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Yeah. No, it was always an absolute
Stop
pleasure.
it.
So, yeah, I'm Jonah. I've been in IT for, well, quite a while as well. I'm 30 something. When I was 7, I was not really that much into computers, but more just taking stuff apart and then not getting it back together again. Yeah, that hasn't really changed for the next 20 years. Been doing cloud technology now for 6 or 7 years. That's about it.
Cool. So we have a bunch of different topics today. Actually, quite a good list. The first one is that reInvent is happening. reInvent is the big annual AWS conference. For those of you who are not aware, reInvent is happening, and it is happening live and in person. It's the 10th anniversary. And if they follow the same policies as Reinforce, Reinforce is happening, I think, next week in Houston. And if you read the health guidelines for Reinforce, there is no requirement for negative tests or vaccination or face masks even.
Even face masks?
I am not yet in the space where that seems like a great idea with 60,000 people.
They should just do it in Bulgaria, and no one will notice anything because Bulgarians are like, I'm too strong and healthy to ever catch that virus. This is like flu; it doesn't exist. Masks are uncomfortable. Vaccines are a lie.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how that will go. The website doesn't give that much information yet. Registration is opening in a little over a week from now, and then hopefully there will be more information as well, and maybe there will be a virtual track as well. But right now it says that there is no virtual track. Other than the keynotes are live streamed, and all the sessions will be available after the event. So it looks like they're doing a traditional.
Yeah,
event.
they're pretending the pandemic never happened.
What pandemic?
Yeah.
I honestly have no words. Like, I want to avoid getting into the whole polarizing subject of where everyone stands in regards to all these measures. But given the global situation that we're in, I think it's very courageous. There's a pretty high likelihood for some really bad press.
Well, at the same time, my friends in the US are telling me that the situation there is really rapidly improving because since Biden took over, he put a very serious amount of effort into getting people vaccinated. So what I think will happen is that on a country level, the US will force people coming in to either have a negative test or be vaccinated. And from that angle, you should expect most people to actually be corona-free when they're entering. And then if they have their situation internally under control, then it could actually work out. But I think it's mostly the mental state of people that is maybe not necessarily ready yet for mass events.
Maybe. Like for my personal perspective, I think that it's also partially just the solidarity that you as a company or as a group of people can show towards the people who are, for example, not already vaccinated, who are going through a tough time, and then gathering with, 60,000 people. Yeah, I don't know. It just
still 6 months from now also, so lots and lots of stuff can change in that time. But it's
summer. First, it will be summer with all of the music festivals that I think are returning to an extent. So that will tell.
Yeah, it might also be a pretty positive thing, as in a taste of sort of getting back to normal.
I think that anyway, nobody can force you to enter a space with 60,000 people and to get corona. Like, if you are too scared, you cannot participate. Like, it's your decision at the end. And unfortunately, many people get too scared during these corona times, and they're now even scared to get out of their neighborhoods. And I'm getting corona and I'll die. And it's a very sad story, but this is something that we need to go through. Like, it's the challenge of our time. Like, it's not a World War II or something. It's still bad, but it's something that we'll learn how to cope and how to go through.
No, that's definitely true.
So Walter's already pushing the next topic about Stack Overflow being solved.
I decided to include it in the list today because I think that most of us have spent more than 0 hours on Stack Overflow. And when I say more than 0, I mean an unforgettable amount of time.
Yeah.
And when these type of companies get sold, it rarely spells good things in the long-term future.
So I read the article, and that was also my first reaction. But then when you read a little bit further, the investment party that is actually that acquired them, so they are a split off from Naspers. Naspers is a very large, I think, South African media conglomerate, and they also have a very large stake in a few companies that I've actually worked for before. Not necessarily going to name them, but one of them was through Oil and Data. They, by my experience, they don't necessarily mess things up directly. In fact, thinking about it, I've actually worked for two companies that have basically had a really large investment, almost like a controlling interest. And by my experience, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. That being said, those were companies that offered services or products where Stack Overflow is more of a community.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
probably on the short to medium term, it's fine. On the longer term, that is going to be interesting.
Yeah, at some point it needs to start paying dividends because someone paid for it, essentially. And the question is, how do you do that with the community?
At the end, they will want to monetize it for sure. Like, nobody is buying stuff just to have a nice shiny things. And depending on the way they really want to get money out of it, it depends. We'll see in the future.
Do you remember that April Fool's Day? When the joke at Stack Overflow was that you had to pay to right-click and copy a script on the page. Do you imagine this actually happening?
I imagine many things. You know that I'm deep in the IT security, and I've been thinking like, if it is a Chinese government proxy, and they are willing to change all the code that people are copy and pasting in their code and somehow put some nasty code inside so they can, I don't know, take over the world or something. Isn't it a good option?
It's a really interesting vector, I think, especially because it's happening completely in public site. So normally when you perform because this is essentially a supply chain attack, Normally you do this really secretly, like sneaking something into the firmware of a device that's inside of a network, but now you're doing this publicly open on the internet.
There are many examples of bad code hidden in open source code.
Yeah, no, it happens often.
Like with the IP stack in the past, with the IPsec stack in the past, and everything. If you remember the saga of Skype, there were some Russians that wanted to buy it. There were some Americans that want to buy it. I'm not sure it was everything and all about the money that you can get out of Skype. It was more like controlling the flow of all conversations and data that was going through this.
But instead, Microsoft bought it and killed it, murdered it with bad code that.
Well, I'm worried for.
There are some interesting stories after Microsoft bought Skype and how people actually managed to show that it was actually sniffed. Like someone was sending, a secret link to a friend through the Skype chat, and a few seconds later he received a ping on that secret link from Microsoft server. So it was like a very, very negative thing. And Microsoft said 3 days later, "Oh, we are just checking if there is a malware on that site or something." Like, yeah, right.
How nice of them.
I don't know.
Personally, when I hear this Stack Overflow news, I'm a little bit more worried about the SourceForge type of scenario where it's slowly bled dry and there's not a single unique event that will make people go away, but just over time, people will be like, yeah, actually, there's some better place. Because
what is it? Death by 1,000 pinpricks?
Yeah, exactly.
Also, but on the other side, not to necessarily look at it negatively, like how would you be able to monetize something like Stack Overflow? Ways that I could see that are not necessarily detrimental to the community, even though it's still a little bit dirty, is like the jobs component. A lot of people also look on Stack Overflow for jobs. What they could do is you can pay to get a sponsored position higher up. Or what they could do is have like business-to-business contracts that you could have. And I think they're already doing that, like your internal Stack Overflow for a company and these kinds of things. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah,
that being said,
right.
I'm cynical by nature, so I hope for the best, but I expect the worst. I think that pretty much covers it for Stack Overflow for me.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Next up, I need to not lose my tab, is another acquisition, which is also interesting. Pluralsight acquired a Cloud Guru. And that is interesting to me because a Cloud Guru not too long ago acquired the Linux
Academy.
Yeah, in 2019.
Yeah.
So that's a huge consolidation of online learning resources, and I'm not super excited, to be honest. I'm a little worried there, but again, it will have to show over time. I think the double acquisition whammy that Linux Academy is now going through is often a dangerous one. Because it's being acquired by a company that acquired your company, and that has some significant challenges to go with it.
Yeah.
I imagine. But it's crazy the speed at which this went with a Cloud Guru, because I remember when they just came to the scene, and that's not even 5 years ago. When was this place founded?
Yeah, that's how I used to do my AWS certifications. Like listen to, I didn't even remember the dude's name, but listen on twice the speed and just fly through it.
Yeah, when that Cronenberg guy was still doing the videos himself.
Yeah, exactly.
There is actually a new service that will make all that learning platforms obsolete. When you want to learn something to go to an interview, I am constantly receiving ads for it. I don't remember the name. I never clicked it, but it was like, pay us, $10, and we'll give you all the answers that are usually to the questions that are usually given on a decent or that big company interviews.
But there's always been brain dumps on torrents and whatnot. I don't know. To me, it would be interesting to see a training platform that is not just videos. I'm not good at video trainings. If
Yeah,
it's
so
something like prescriptive, do this and that, like more practical.
That
there are
was
a
of
few
course a
labs like
joke.
that.
That was of course a joke. There will always be a need for such platforms, and even if the worst came and they ruin the company after this acquisition, whatever. There is also a positive thing, like if you ruin something that is majorly recognized on the market, it's actually opening space for new ones, for new players. And if you don't like paying to the big companies for learning platforms, there will always be small ones, and small ones are always more flexible, more innovative, and everything. Like, of course.
I mean, going back to what I said before, the whole reason that GitHub is a thing now is because SourceForge messed up that acquisition, and then people started to go like, "Oh, we need to some other place to be at," and that's where GitHub came along.
Yeah, but I think that's the truth nowadays. It used to be the small get eaten by the big, but now it's the slow get eaten by the fast.
Yeah.
Do you when we speak about acquisitions, do you know any success story about acquisition, like 5 years later?
So this is the funny part, because my company went through an acquisition by HeleCloud, and the funny part is that somebody told me this during the acquisition. Actually, one of our employees did, Afraz, and he said, the thing with acquisitions is that you only ever hear about the failed ones. The successful acquisitions, you never hear about them. So he was part of Yammer when it got acquired by Microsoft, and that acquisition actually was quite successful. And therefore, you never hear about the Yammer acquisition by Microsoft, simply because there wasn't really any newsworthy stuff to come out.
Good news doesn't sell, right?
Yeah.
That's probably this, yeah. Okay.
Our next topic is quite interesting. It has to do with not actually that much public cloud, but I want to talk about anyway. Is an article that talks about how people who like working from home and are forced by their companies to go back to offices are just simply looking for new jobs. And I think that that this is quite true, and companies need to figure out how to deal with that. We just had a meeting this week in HeleCloud for figuring out what to do with our office policy in Bulgaria, and the conclusion was actually what we've been doing the last year and something works quite well. There's really not that much need for change, except for the fact that slowly it will become not an issue at all to go back to an office when needed. So let's not force this too much and leave it up to the teams to kind of decide, hey, do we need to be in the office? Then let's meet in the office. Do we not need to be in the office? Then if you want to be there, fine. But if you want to be home, also fine. And I think that hybrid approach has the biggest, and that the hybrid and loosely controlled version has the biggest chance of being successful, because if you start making blanket rules for an entire company, there are always going to be teams and individuals, teams and departments who cannot deal with that and don't want to deal with it. And there's no real point in doing one or the other.
In Bulgaria, what happened was Sofia, the capital city where everyone works, is getting busier and busier. There's no room for children in daycare anymore. Traffic is horrible. Real estate is super expensive. When the pandemic started, people started going back to their hometowns with their Sofia level salary, because their hometowns, they don't have that work available at all, that work opportunity, not to mention the salary. And if you start forcing people to go back to the office, this would mean going back to the busy place where they don't actually want to live, but they need to work there. but they're super happy going to the office once a week or twice a week, traveling from a remote place.
So there was this one line in the article that really struck me, like that it's time to have a very nuanced conversation about this. So I also like, Walter, how you said that it has the highest chance of success instead of saying this is the best. So I come from the Netherlands. I live in Amsterdam, and this is something that we've also been seeing during the pandemic, that first everyone wanted to live in Amsterdam. It was really difficult to find a house, etc., etc. And through the pandemic, people decided, you know what, I will live, let's say, a less urban environment, so the deurbanization. So what I wonder is, people start to see what's more important to them. Maybe they want more room, they might want a garden, they want more room for their kids. But I think that's also affected by the fact that a lot of the facilities that were available in the city were not available for that time. So what I wonder is, let's say 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when we're back to normal, if that's still true, like if still a lot of these people who decided to move back towards their hometowns, if they still see it that way, especially considering the fact that probably a lot of offices will disappear, freeing up more room for new initiatives in the city.
It is a much broader topic, I think, because there are many complex reasons for people not willing to go back to the office. On the opposite side, there are many people that want to go back to office because they get too much love from their kids and relatives at home, and they want to actually start meeting other peoples because it's in their nature and they feel bad. It's like the common introvert versus extrovert stuff, but it's much more complex, of course. And the hybrid approach, let's call it, I think it's the new future. And Jonah, I'm not sure that there will be a return back to normal. We'll return like in the stories. We'll return back in the beginning, but changed.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hence the finger quotes. Life will never be the way that it was before. Like the genie is already out of the bottle.
Just for example, in a specific case where you had a very good employee that is just scared to go to the office because he's having some hypochondria issues or whatever, and he's just
social
scared.
anxiety.
Or social anxiety or whatever. It's a nightmare for these people to actually force them to come back to the office.
Oh no, for sure.
They will not be productive at all. It will be a nightmare for them. It's a broader topic, really, and I believe it will be something that will be decided, I don't know, at least by smart companies, case by case, and there cannot be a general policy. Let's say everybody back to the office.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like
I like
company that I'm working for.
Use.
I like the story about how in Germany they make lanes in the park instead of when they make, and I don't know if it's true or not, maybe it's like one of those urban legends, but when they open up a new park, they don't have any lanes at first, and they just see where people go, and based on that they make the lanes. So this is a very good approach to creating processes. Just see what people do and create a process around it, if it works for everyone, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
You were going to say something, Jonah?
Yeah, so I very much agree with Vasil. The company I work for, the way that we have approached our office, and now we feel strengthened in that belief, is it should mainly be a place where you want to be. It functions like a social hub. So if people want to go there, they want to meet each other, or they want to collaborate, it should facilitate in that. But it makes no sense at all forcing them to be there. They will not be more productive. They will not be more happy. Additionally, you're spending an enormous amount of money just making sure you have enough seats and desks for everyone.
Yep. Which will lead to other interesting problems. So we already had this in the older data times before we joined HeleCloud. We made a policy that everyone was encouraged to come to the office on Fridays, but it also meant that the other days there was barely anyone in the office. So you'd come to the office, and if you were lucky, there was another person there.
But I think what Lina said made a lot of sense. So see what people do. and then you will see that people start to coalesce around certain days or certain moments, and it will happen in an organic fashion.
Yeah.
Or they will self-organize.
In Bulgaria, it was Tuesday because there was a discount on fuel at one of the petrol stations. You can't. No, you can't imagine this before seeing it. Like,
yeah, no, but
Yeah,
definitely
whatever works. That's funny.
so.
But
last
yeah,
article-
so yeah.
Or did you want to have a closing
No, you go ahead,
statement?
please.
I really laughed at this last article about Microsoft to review its next generation of Windows on June 24th. And the first comment on Reddit being, I'd just like to slide into these comments early to clarify that next generation of Windows just means the next semi-annual feature update for Windows 10, which is probably going to be a relatively big update because of the Sun Valley UI changes they mention in the article. But yeah, don't expect like next generation.
Yeah. And so the reason I put it in there actually is that I realized that I haven't used the last at least 2 or 3 major versions. I've never really actually used Windows 10 nor whatever came before that. And
Same here.
quite happy to be, and this was at some point in the last 2 decades, this was unthinkable. As an IT engineer, you would actually not touch Windows for an extended amount of time. And every once in a while when I read these things, I'm like, maybe I should go try it again. And then you try it for a while and like everything breaks because there are no standards and everything is messed up, and it's not Microsoft's fault, it's not Windows' fault. It's developers' fault because they take standards pretty lax. And I used to program Delphi, which was would generate Windows applications. And especially back then, everything was allowed, so you could basically just create an executable and dump it in the Windows directory, and it just work. Obviously, since then, a lot of that has been locked down, but it just highlights how the restrictions are much less tight on Microsoft in general than they are on Linux or on the Mac. Especially on the Mac, it's quite locked down.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too much. I am on a Mac, but for example, if you want to run Docker, that means that in the background there's basically a VM running your containers.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's funny because I believe in freedom of choice, but I also believe that by and large people need to be guided, because freedom of choice isn't necessarily always a great idea for people who either A, don't care, or B, shouldn't be allowed to have the freedom of choice.
Shut up, Nazi.
I'm talking about software choices, Lina. Thank you.
Last week I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine. She somehow broke her laptop and bought a new hard drive and said, "Can you reinstall the Windows for me?" And I said, "No, I will not. I will install Ubuntu for you, because what you are
because I'm your friend."
Not anymore.
Not after
so
this
I installed Ubuntu. I've checked, of course, and she said, I need to check mail, double clicking like in the popular show, that kind of basic stuff. And I decided that Ubuntu should be good enough for this kind of stuff. And she said, no. She tried several days to work with the Ubuntu, and at the end she said, I want my Windows back. It's much prettier and it's better. And I was trying to explain why it's not better, and at the end I realized that I cannot explain this to a person that is not deeply in the technology, because people are just liking Windows because it's easy for them, and that's
what they've used their whole life, and people are creatures of habit.
Well,
yeah, of course. And this is normal. And this new next-gen Windows, for the last few Windows I've been touching, I sense something. It's again the paranoid Vasil. I sense that Microsoft is trying to push harder and harder for you to go to the Microsoft cloud for everything. Like when you install Windows 10, it's very hard to actually create a local account for the system. Like it's buried somewhere and it's very well hidden, and you are forced to create a Microsoft account so you can enter your local workstation, Windows One. And they're pushing in that direction several years now, because data is everything, and everybody is trying to collect as much data as possible. So it would be not that interesting for me to see the new themes and the new icons and the new all the stuff that were said by Microsoft, all the shiny things. For me, it would be more interesting to see what are they doing for their deeper cloud integration with Office 365 and everything. Because by default, when you open a Word document and try to save it, it says, okay, save it to OneDrive. Like it's not saying save it to my documents. And
That's really
I believe that
valuable.
there will be a hidden updates in that direction too. Not
Well,
that hidden, but probably.
I think you may be right.
Let's play devil's advocate a little bit. I'm very much a proponent of open source software, free software. Usually, I either use Linux or Mac. My last version of Windows, I think, was Windows 7, which was sort of decent. Let's take a look from the perspective of the consumer, the person using it. For them, it is, I think, pretty much what they want. Like when you save your document on OneDrive, it's immediately backed up. There's versioning. There's all the good stuff that you get with all the cloud technology. Personally, I don't necessarily see that as a benefit, but I can imagine that for people who are not, let's say, power users, it might be. That being said, like you mentioned, the market is about data. Everyone wants to collect as much data as possible. I am very scared that the person who makes my OS is collecting data on me, very much,
Scary,
which is one of the reasons that personally I don't use it. But if you don't care that much about these things, the value proposition, I think, is quite decent.
And see, on the opposite side, what is Apple doing? They're starting to promote that they care about your data. They are also collecting data and propose their services, cloud services. However, at least till now, they are very strong in this, like, we cannot see your data, we will not touch your data, we will not make analytics on your data. And they're pushing in that direction. And that's probably the new separation line between Microsoft and Mac world or Linux.
Maybe, but have you ever seen an audit of that? Actually someone verifying this? Like, otherwise we're leaving them at face value.
There are thousands of people working in Apple. Somebody will get mad on them and just will.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's reasonable.
Like Snowden and at some point.
At the same time, we have reached, or actually surpassed once again, half an hour. It's so easy to fill half an hour with smart people and interesting thoughts. I guess, Lina, do you want to do the close-up of the...
Yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. Once again, a little bit away from the cloud. But you can't just talk about cloud. Everything else affects it as well. What we normally do is we give our guests 2 minutes to promote ideas that they hold dear or themselves. So Vasco, you want to go first? What do you want to tell people?
I am totally unprepared for this. You didn't mention that one.
Okay, just tell them to keep their data safe. And
keep your data safe. And I love you.
Okay. Jonah?
Yeah, I'm also completely unprepared in this regard, so I will fully agree with Vasil and tell people to keep their data safe.
Okay, well, guys, you have been wonderful guests. We had a really nice show. I just want to say happy first birthday to my daughter, who will one day watch this episode and be like, "What? Why were you working on my first birthday?" And I'm like, "Shut up, you also had a babysitter for the rest of the day." So have a happy Friday and a wonderful weekend, and see you again next week when we'll be discussing the AWS Summit.
Yes, awesome. Thanks, Jonah. Thanks, Vasil.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.